Large organizations, and even not so large ones, need to automate infrastructure change. It's kind of a fact of life. On the other hand, you don't want those tools to be too restrictive on development teams. You'd like those teams to have as much autonomy as possible, because that's usually when they get their best work done. I talked today to my colleague Pere Urbón-Bayes about a pretty cool open source tool he's built and some community he's built around the tool that tries to find the sweet spot between these two extremes. Before we get to that conversation, a word from our sponsor, and that sponsor is Confluent Developer. That's developer.confluent.io, a website that we think has everything you'll need to get started using Kafka and Confluent. There are video tutorials, executable tutorials that you actually type code out and it works and it runs. You can get started using Confluent Cloud. There's a library of event-driven architecture patterns, kind of a new thing that people have found super useful. You really should check it out. And if you do any of those exercises or tutorials or examples and you sign up on Confluent Cloud, you can use the code podcast100 to get an extra $100 of free credit as you get started. Now, let's get to the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of Streaming Audio. I'm your host, Tim Berglund, and I'm joined here today by my friend and coworker, Pere Urbón-Bayes. Pere is a solutions architect here at Confluent, lives in Berlin, Germany. Pere, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Good to have you here. Now, you're originally from Barcelona, right?
Yeah, born and raised in Barcelona. Actually, in a small city or a small town nearby, but nobody knows, so I'm born and raised in Barcelona.
I say I live in Denver because nobody really knows where Littleton is. Nobody really needs to. You know, it's okay unless you're from here.
It's okay.
But awesome. I've been to Barcelona twice, I think, and that needs to not be the lifetime maximum for me. There definitely needs to be more exposure to Barcelona.
It's a beautiful city, and everybody asks me, what the hell are you doing in Berlin when you are from Barcelona?
I didn't want to say that like on air. You know, I didn't want to throw shade at Berlin or ask you an embarrassing question. It does seem like you could live in Barcelona and you don't, but let's assume that there are good reasons for it.
There are good reasons.
Let them be your reasons and yours alone.
Sorry, I have this broken sense of humor, Tim. So.
Oh no, it's good. It's good. Let's get into what we want to talk about today, which, I think your thoughts on this subject are really subtle. When I kind of hear you talk, I hear you talking about deployment automation and things, which is a very tactical kind of simple approach. And I think you have, your goal is really something more subtle than that. So tell me about, you're a solution architect, which means what? Actually, tell us before we get into the meat. What do you do? Make sure everybody knows what a solution architect is.
So what do I do? That's a very good question. I work mostly with customers of Confluent, but before that, I was a freelancer and a consultant. So I used to work for my own customers, and I help, or my line of work is to help people deploy Kafka and write applications and make sure that what they are building is successful. And I try to do this not only with having, one specific technology or one technology process in mind, but bringing agility to the process. So making sure that the organization is agile and is able to adapt and develop quickly to change, because change is what is happened all the time in software processes.
Cool. So I want to frame the problem. And I think I understand the problem you're trying to solve. So in your work with customers as an independent, and now as a solution architect, helping people who buy Confluent Cloud, Confluent Platform, helping them build stuff with it and figure out how to use it. What do you see happen in larger organizations when individual development teams have to go through a lot of process to make things happen? Because anytime like I talk to a big customer, there's like, well, if you want a topic, you go fill out a form and you don't use the producer API, you use our wrapper and it's got all this stuff. And there's like a lot of control, which it seems to be, there's reasons for that. I mean, I wouldn't want that job, but it happens. But how do you see that play out? That idea of where decisions get made? Do they get made at a centralized place? Do they get made at a team? What goes well there and what doesn't go well there?
There is always a point for decisions and control. However, the way I try to encourage people to work and the way we try to encourage projects to be deployed and organized is with the idea of autonomy in mind. As a team, as a developer, what do I need and how do I need it? Do I need a topic? Do I need a configuration? Do I need to deploy a connector or a SQL query? I can solve the problems myself. Because if I can solve the problems myself, I don't have to wait more cycles before other one is able to solve the problem for me. And in that way, teams are, especially agile teams, are more autonomous in a sense that they can control what they can solve and they know their project. So, and these it's play out in different technology implementations. However, the most important core functionality of this is to allow the teams to solve their own problems. That it does not involve no control, but it involves you being able to submit a request or request for resources, aka topic, configurations, as I said, the different artifacts that you can create and deploy, but yourself. And then there is an approval process that can be more strict or less strict in order to tell you green light, go ahead, or no, you have to please do changes because what you are requesting doesn't fulfill policy.
Got it. This kind of reminds me of a couple things. First is, this is an old idea now, but the agile vertical slice idea of a team that isn't some sort of infrastructure team or data team or front end team, but they've got all those pieces and they deliver a slice of application vertically through the architectural layer cake that does something valuable that a customer or a user can see. Sounds like you're talking about that. It also reminds me of, I never know what order episodes are going to air in. So we don't always have that totally planned when we're recording. But last week, so it's June 22nd, 2021, when you and I are talking right now. Last week, I talked to Jamek Dekhani, who's the thinker behind Data Mesh. And she was kind of explaining that same sort of thing. Like, this stuff needs to be localized to a team. And it's not a new idea. I mean, we've been saying this for a long time. As long as there's been agile
team. So the ideas are changing, but you are sticking up with the principles from long time ago. I mean,
and I feel like what you're doing here is you're taking those and you're kind of calling us to say, hey, let's do those. Let's be faithful to those principles that we kind of all agree on. Yep. So anyway, walk us through with the principles and the ideas on the table. Walk us through, what you've seen built, what you've encouraged people to build. And I kind of feel like we're talking specifically about Confluent and Kafka and Confluent Cloud, and Confluent Platform infrastructure, people building stuff out of Kafka in whatever form, the tension between central control and local autonomy.
Yeah.
Flesh that out. Talk to the developer or the architect in the big organization to give him or her an idea how this works.
So I think that's a very interesting question, Tim, and it's actually one conversation that I have with every other customer I work with. The most important thing is you will get a central team, a central platform team that manages the Kafka or the Confluent platform in general. And they are responsible for providing a service. How do you get request for such a service? It can have different interfaces. It's very common, and I've seen it over the years, where people send an email. Please give me a topic with this configuration. And then a poor human have to not forget the email, do the right thing. It's nothing good happens usually.
If I was on the other side of that email doing the admin, that development effort would grind to a halt, I think.
Yeah.
As my close coworkers know.
Victoria,
processes. This message is for you. Anyway, go on.
But it happened. I've seen it. Other processes, other traditions that happen in such a case is please open a Jira ticket.
Yeah.
Someone creates a Jira ticket, you have to go to planning, then you solve your problems 2 weeks after. That's not agile. And at the end, these kind of operations are very simple. Create a topic is a less than a minute's task. But doing it in order, like which is the structure of the namespace, which is the route configuration, how many topics or how many partitions can you have. All these are nuances that can be, for example, standardized by a platform team. You can only, sorry, I apologize
No
for
problem.
this. Sorry.
It is the background sound of podcasts. It's either Slack or a
No,
dog
it's
or a
Teams. I
baby
forgot to close the Teams. Kill me, please.
or dishes. Dishes is the big one for me because they just, that sound comes through the microphone. These things happen. We live in houses,
I apologize for
and
that,
we have
guys.
computers. Don't worry at all.
But what I was trying to mention is you can have different interfaces, but then these processes are something boring. No operator likes to do this. It's not exciting. You prefer to be focused on resiliency planning, on chaos testing. That's more fun as an operator, and it gives the company more value than you just creating topics.
That's a good point. So, like, kind of from my standpoint, if you're an operator who likes to give conference talks, which one are you going to get a talk out of? I created a topic, or here is my next gen resiliency plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as a developer, as an application developer who I need something, I know what I need. I need a topic. I maybe need it. Maybe I don't need to go to a specific configuration, so I can have a label. I can say need a topic category gold, or I need a topic category silver. Yeah. And the applications you are deploying to. You have a Kafka stream application that reads from these topics and writes to these other topics. All this is in your experience and knowledge. So you can change a file, or you can submit a request through a web page, yeah, that tells the operator, or like they say that the deployment steward, to this is what I need. It is okay. In most common organizations, at the very beginning of these processes, this review is done by a human. So human gets confidence to learn and to know what they can deploy, etc., etc. But at the mid-long term, solutions like the one that I created, JulieOps, or others that are now available for doing this job, they allow you to have validations. So you as a human don't have to validate everything, but you can say, I don't know, I like all my topics names to be camel case, just to invent something. Or I like partitions to be always minimum 3.
Sure.
Yeah. So you can have a validation that's done by
or
process.
Something. Yeah.
Yeah. And then as soon as this is, you can do requests, you have abstractions that serve you. Request goes to deployment steward or the operator. He or she says green light, deploy. Then this is just magic of admin and a custom agent, custom software that is able to read what is in the target cluster. What do you want? Calculate the difference and apply the changes. As an operator, I got one less admin task to bother. I can focus on the really good things: scalability, resiliency, and all things that brings joy and fun to work. As a developer, I solve my own problems. So I'm autonomous and I have joy and fun to work. There is one book that I want to mention that I really, really like by Daniel H. Pink. It's called Drive, who defines the 3 things that people like to have, that motivates people: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. We like our craft.
Excellent book.
So we have mastery. The purpose comes to the project, and the autonomy, it's bring by tools like what we are talking about today.
Yes. Tell us about JulieOps a little bit. And by the way, we should get a link to Drive in the show notes. It's a great book. I can't recommend it enough. Just a set of ideas you ought to have in your head and think about. And also, clearly, we'll have a link to JulieOps. So tell us about that.
Sorry, I had to mention the book because I'm a book nerd. So
hey, no, we don't mention enough books on this podcast, in my opinion. So I'm glad that came up.
JulieOps is an open source project that we will have the link on the podcast for sure. And it started by our work in the PS team with customers. It started very slowly by me here in Germany, but we have many contributors internally from Confluent and external to Confluent. And it's a tool that allows you to describe as a YAML how the world should looks like with your topics, your configuration, etc. And it then applies the changes into Kafka. But not only Kafka, it does topics, configurations, ACLs, role-based access control, and it does a schema registry, it does connectors and KSQL queries.
So it's directly, like it's integrated at the library level with admin client and so forth. Okay.
Admin client, custom HTTP client, and it's able to, it has the idea of a state. It's like do you know Terraform, Tim?
Yeah.
It could be like a custom Terraform to do these things.
Got it. It's not Terraform, but for people who don't know Terraform, explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, Terraform is a tool to deploy or request machines into cloud environments, but not only cloud, as well VMware, and to say, I want a machine that way, please give it to me. I don't know how do you do it, but please give it to me.
Right.
And it can do deletes and updates, etc., of configuration, etc.
You have a declarative rather than an imperative DSL.
Sorry, I forgot about this. It's like Terraform, that's declarative. JulieOps is as well declarative. You explain what you want, and it's responsibility of the tool to decide how to get it.
And does JulieOps then go look at the cluster and see what it currently is and make deltas? Or nice. Okay,
that's the correct idea.
Again, just like Terraform. Yeah.
It's like Terraform, but I like to code, so we started like this. It could have well been a Terraform
provider.
A provider.
Nice. Okay. So, what's the interface like? The interface then is a DSL.
YAML file. You put YAML file, and it's a CLI. It's usually deployed with Jenkins process. So from Git, you get a hook to Jenkins, and Jenkins gets the YAML from the Git and applies the changes. But it as well is being deployed in Kubernetes deployment with OpenShell. OpenShell operator, with shell operator, and at the end, it's basically a tool that was born to help. It started by one customer, started growing, and and nowadays it's used in quite a lot of places.
Well, a YAML file, Bruno Borges, call your office. You know Bruno.
I know Bruno.
Yeah. Okay. He's a huge supporter and advocate of YAML, and is always speaking out about how more things should be done in YAML. And I think in the community, we all appreciate his strong advocacy in favor of YAML. And
I had to pick one evil. You
had to pick
Jason,
exactly.
But YAML is everywhere as well. So
it's not like it's controversial, especially if you're trying to live in the Kubernetes world, then that's the format that everybody's doing.
Because in HCL, for example, that's the one that Terraform uses. But YAML was the easiest one to pick up, and especially for people who is not that into some things, it's more standard to use. But I know what you mean, Tim. It's always complex.
I hate looking at JSON. I mean, we all hate looking at XML. You could do it as some custom Ruby DSL. Nobody's ever tried that with deployment automation tools before. That's gone well, So
Jeff, it was doing a very good job. So
it actually did filled an important role. But having an imperative language in there, it's just, Pere, we're not capable of resisting that kind of temptation. You just don't do that. You're trying to quit smoking and you keep a carton of cigarettes on your desk, you're going to smoke them. It's going to happen. And if you have an imperative language in your DSL, you're going to do things that you shouldn't.
That's like migrations. There is process to the same thing with migrations or with declarative language. Right. I prefer declarative because as a developer, the biggest why this tool even started is to bring autonomy to developers.
Right.
And as a developer, I don't care how it is implemented underneath. I care what I want. And here is former Ruby developer. I did a lot of Rails migrations in my past and didn't got to like it at all because what can go wrong when you get 200 even 500 migrations in a Ruby on Rails project. So I like the way that's descriptive, so that as a developer I know what I want and know how to describe it. Yeah, and then someone else will do the magic.
Then there is, strictly speaking, a function that transforms that into the side effects in the world that you want.
into the delta.
And that's just easier. I think it's a consensus that most of us are converged on now, that that's easier to reason about the world. And when it comes to operations, we would like an easier reasoning process, because
For me, it's about empathy, about trying to make the life of developers easier.
Yeah. So maybe just kind of cap it all off, like walk us through a scenario of things working well. And because like I have, okay, so here's JulieOps. That's a potential part of the solution. If you're doing that, or if you're not in a big company, what does my life look like as a developer? Am I making infrastructure changes by pull request? Is there a web form? Like, we want there to be automation, but how does that put that all together? Because I see the pieces, but I don't yet see what it feels like to live in that world.
The most common way is as a developer, I have a GitHub repository, or even inside my own GitHub repository from my application, I have a directory where one or multiple files, YAML files, sorry for that, describe the world. Yeah, they describe the project that you are working on, describe the topics, describe the articles, the schemas, etc. You do a pull request to signal these changes. Yeah. Then someone in charge will do the approval, the review and the approval. Yeah. This review could be more strict or less strict depending on the environment. Why the pull request is important is because many organizations are PCI compliant. So they need the change management process. You build something like this without change management, no good process. So like, they don't care about what it brings them. They need the change management because of auditing. And they need to say, okay, I've deployed this to production. This person or this process has been the approval, and it wasn't at that time, etc., etc. And this is the pull request, you give it to us. So steward approve pull request gets applied. The changes in these files gets merged to master, and Git or Bitbucket or whatever, it's a Git server, will send a webhook. Yeah, so we'll send a small HTTP request to Jenkins, for example, or any other CI/CD system. CI/CD system will clone the Git repository, read the file, calculate the delta, and apply the changes in the target systems.
Okay. That seems pretty good. Yeah. So you still have governance.
Yeah.
Because you need governance for
Always.
production stuff. And you've also got, that's now an infrastructure as code story. There's a declarative file that's controlled in a Git repository, and automation to make it happen. It doesn't seem that hard. And you've gotten this, you've helped customers do this.
Yep.
And seen it work. Nice.
And it's kind of interesting when you start an open source project like this one, and suddenly you find that someone from Australia is actually doing pull request. They're like, where are you coming from? Thank you.
That's a nice feeling, isn't it? Of course, now you have to work on the pull request, and that's not free, but it's nice that people are using it and contributing.
I got a couple of people that doesn't work for Confluent from Norway. Yeah. They are really cool people. They are deploying JulieOps with one of their customers. They are very happy doing multiple pull requests. And the only shame I have is that I don't have enough time to help them. Yeah. But it's just an amazing feeling to see a community growing up and seeing people finding basically the tool helpful.
Yeah. Because you're no stranger to open source, so
not at all
surprising that this would be a success.
But I like this, like the possibility to help. Yeah.
My guest today has been Pere Urbón-Bayes. Pere, thanks for being a part of Streaming Audio.
Thank you for making it possible, Tim. I appreciate it.
And there you have it. Thanks for listening to this episode. Now, some important details before you go. Streaming Audio is brought to you by Confluent Developer. That's developer.confluent.io, a website dedicated to helping you learn Kafka, Confluent, and everything in the broader event streaming ecosystem. We've got free video courses, a library of event-driven architecture design patterns, executable tutorials covering KSQLDB, Kafka streams, and core Kafka APIs. There's even an index of episodes of this podcast. So if you take a course on Confluent Developer, you'll have the chance to use Confluent Cloud. When you sign up, use the code PODCAST100 to get an extra $100 of free Confluent Cloud usage. Anyway, as always, I hope this podcast was helpful to you. If you want to discuss it or ask a question, you can always reach out to me at tlberglund on Twitter. That's TLBERGLUND. Or you can leave a comment on the YouTube video if you're watching and not just listening, or reach out in our community Slack or forum. Both are linked in the show notes. And while you're at it, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and to this podcast wherever fine podcasts are sold. And if you subscribe through Apple Podcasts, be sure to leave us a review there. That helps other people discover us, which we think is a good thing. So, thanks for your support, and we'll see you next time.